Module 1 of Foundations, Concepts, and Early Development in International Economic Relations. Introduction to the course. Welcome to this course on international economic and relations. Our goal here is to equip you with a solid foundation in the basic concepts, policies, and historical developments that shape the international economic system. By the time you've completed both modules, you will have not only an understanding of how the world economy works but also the political and strategic forces that guide it. In this first module, we will begin with the core ideas behind international economic relations, move into the historical evolution of the global economic order since the mid-20th century, and examine the role of major institutions created in the aftermath of World War II. 1. Understanding international economic relations. International economic relations is essentially about how countries interact economically, and how their political relationships influence those interactions. When we say economic relations, we are talking about trade in goods and services, movement of capital, including investment, loans, and foreign aid, migration and labor flows, technology transfer and intellectual property, global financial systems and currency exchange. When we add the word international, we are talking about cross-border activities and the policies, agreements, and institutions that regulate them. This field is unique because it sits at the intersection of economics and political science. Economic factors often determine political choices, and political decisions often reshape economic opportunities. 2. Why study international economic relations? There are three main reasons why understanding this subject is essential. Global interdependence. No country operates in isolation anymore. Whether we look at supply chains for electronics, the price of oil, or the spread of financial crises, the actions of one nation can have worldwide consequences. Policy and diplomacy. International economic knowledge allows policymakers to negotiate trade deals, defend national interests, and respond effectively to crises. Development and growth. For developing nations, international economic policies can mean the difference between stagnation and rapid growth. Understanding how aid, trade, and investment work is essential for long-term planning. 3. Key concepts in international economic relations. Before we go further, we need to clarify some essential terms. A. Balance of payments. A country's record of all economic transactions with the rest of the world, including imports, exports, investment income, and financial transfers. B. The exchange rate. The price of one country's currency in terms of another. Exchange rate policies can be fixed, floating, or managed. C. Comparative advantage. The principle that a country should specialize in producing goods it can make most efficiently and trade for others. D. Protectionism. The use of tariffs, quotas, and other measures to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. E. Globalization. The increasing integration of economies worldwide through trade, investment, migration, and technology. 4. The character of the international economic order since 1945. A. Post-war reconstruction. At the end of World War II in 1945, much of Europe and Asia lay in ruins. The United States emerged as the dominant economic and military power, holding over half of the world's industrial capacity. Global leaders recognized that economic instability had contributed to the war. Their response was to design a new system of international cooperation to prevent protectionism and economic collapse, stabilize currencies, promote trade, support reconstruction. B. The Bretton Woods Conference. In 1944, representatives of 44 countries met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The outcome was the creation of a set of institutions and rules to govern the post-war economic order. These included the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to ensure currency stability and provide short-term loans. The World Bank, initially to fund post-war reconstruction, later focusing on development. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, to promote trade liberalization. This arrangement became known as the Bretton Woods system. C. Features of the Bretton Woods system. Fixed exchange rates. Currencies were pegged to the US dollar, which was convertible to gold. Multilateralism. Countries agreed to resolve trade disputes through negotiation rather than unilateral action. Development aid. An emphasis on funding for reconstruction and, later, for developing nations. The system worked well for about 25 years, fueling global growth and stability. D. The collapse of Bretton Woods. By the early 1970s, the system began to strain. The US had mounting deficits from the Vietnam War and social programs. Gold reserves were insufficient to back the growing number of dollars in circulation. In 1971, the United States ended dollar-gold convertibility. By 1973, major currencies were floating against each other, marking the end of the original Bretton Woods system. 5. The dominant states in the global economy. Since 1945, a few states have dominated global economic activity. A. The United States. Economic leadership in trade, finance, and innovation. Control over the dollar, the main global reserve currency. B. Western Europe. Rebuilt through the Marshall Plan and later integrated economically via the European Union. C. Japan. Rapid post-war industrial growth, becoming a major exporter of technology and manufactured goods. D. China. Since the late 20th century, China's economic rise has been dramatic, making it a central player in trade and manufacturing. E. Emerging economies. Countries like India, Brazil, and South Korea have grown in influence, especially in technology and services. 6. Theories of international trade. Theories of trade help us understand why countries exchange goods and services. A. Classical theory, comparative advantage. David Ricardo's principle that even if a country is less efficient at producing everything, it can still benefit from specializing in what it produces relatively better. B. Heckscher-Ohlin theory. Countries export goods that use their abundant factors of production and import those that require factors they lack. C. New trade theory. Emphasizes economies of scale and network effects in explaining trade patterns. 7. World trade dilemmas. While trade promotes growth, it also creates tensions. Trade imbalances, persistent deficits or surpluses can cause disputes. Protectionist backlash, domestic industries may push for tariffs. Environmental concerns, increased production and shipping affect the planet. Labor standards, low wages in some countries raise ethical issues. 8. Global trade institutions, GATT, UNCTAD, WTO. A. GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Established in 1947 as a provisional trade treaty, GATT organized multiple rounds of negotiations to reduce tariffs. B. UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Formed in 1964 to give developing countries a voice in trade negotiations and push for fairer terms of trade. C. WTO, World Trade Organization. Created in 1995 to replace GATT, the WTO has a stronger dispute settlement system and covers not just goods but also services and intellectual property. 9. International Monetary Fund, IMF, and its role. The IMF is a central player in the global financial system. Its main functions: providing short-term loans to countries with balance of payments problems, monitoring global economic trends, offering technical assistance in economic management. While helpful in crisis, the IMF has faced criticism for imposing austerity measures that can harm vulnerable populations. 10. The politics of foreign aid. Foreign aid involves complex relationships between donors and recipients. While it can promote development, it can also create dependency, serve as a tool for political influence, be tied to donor economic interest. Aid is often categorized into bilateral aid, from one country directly to another; multilateral aid, through institutions like the World Bank or UN agencies; humanitarian aid, in response to emergencies. 11. Economic sanctions and international enforcement. Sanctions are restrictions imposed on a country to influence its behavior. They may include trade embargoes, asset freezes, travel bans. While sanctions can be effective, they can also hurt ordinary citizens more than political leaders, raising ethical debates. We have now covered the concepts, historical context, major institutions, and early challenges of the post-1945 international economic order. In Module 2, we will shift our attention to Post-Cold War changes in the global economy. The rise of new economic powers. Contemporary trade disputes. Debt crisis and financial instability. The politics of globalization in the 21st century.